Remember rolling down your windows in the summer of 1973? The world felt heavy, but AM radio was pure magic. Yet those familiar melodies hid secrets. Today we will uncover a pop hit everyone thought was about a dog but actually insulted a stalker. We will hear the ultimate American teenage anthem, penned by a man who never once lived in the land of the free. And we will revisit a cheerful chart topper that tragically became a heartbreaking farewell just months later. Today, we are counting down 10 summer hits from 1973 that ruled the radio. Number 10. My Love by Paul McCartney and Wings.
I love.
Picture a man trying to find his footing after walking away from the biggest band in history. The Beatles were gone, and Paul was dangerously close to fading out after his new band, Wings, had a rocky start. He needed a lifeline. He found it by sitting at a piano and thinking about the one person who stood by him through the darkest days, his wife, Linda. They recorded it live at Abbey Road. But here is the beautiful part. That deeply emotional guitar solo you remember so well was not written by Paul. Guitarist Henry McCullough stepped up on the 14th take, threw away the script, and completely improvised it on the spot. Paul was stunned, and he kept it. It was a rare, magical moment of letting go, and the world was ready for it. For 4 straight weeks, it sat at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. If you turned on an AM radio in the summer of 1973, melody was everywhere, quietly but firmly ruling the airwaves. Back then, we listened to it as a sweet, simple love letter. We had no idea how heavy those lyrics would become. 25 years later, in 1998, this exact same song echoed through a quiet church playing as Paul said his final goodbye to Linda after she lost her battle with cancer. What started as a summer hit to save a career became a heartbreaking farewell to a soulmate. It reminds us that the greatest songs do not just rule the radio. They hold our hands through a lifetime of love and loss.
Everywhere was my love.
Every song tells a story. What memory does this one bring back for you? Share it in the comments. You may find someone else smiling as they remember that very same moment. Number 9. Bad, Bad Leroy Brown by Jim Croce.
It's bad, bad Leroy Brown.
Let us be honest for a second. In the summer of 1973, you could not roll down a car window without hearing about the baddest man in the whole damn town. It was everywhere. But behind this foot-stomping rhythm hides one of the most heartbreaking stories in American music. Leroy Brown was not some made-up character. Jim met the real guy while stationed at Fort Dix in New Jersey. A soldier who went absent without leave, only to get arrested on payday. For years, that image rattled around in Jim's brain. When he finally recorded it, his producers pushed for a bouncing boogie-woogie feel. It was totally different from his usual quiet folk style.
Well, Friday we can go.
And boy, did it work. By July, it grabbed the number 1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed there for 2 weeks. Jim was on top of the world, but fate is a cruel writer. Just 2 months later, in September, Jim boarded a small plane in Louisiana. He had just finished a show where Leroy Brown was the very last song he ever sang to a cheering crowd. That plane never made it to its destination.
Leroy Brown, that's about a mess with a wife of a job.
A few days after Jim died, his wife Ingrid opened a letter he had mailed right before the crash. In it, he wrote that he missed his family too much, and he was quitting the music business to come home for good. He just wanted to be a dad. When the news broke, disc jockeys across the country stopped their shows. They played Leroy Brown again and again. We were not tapping our feet anymore. We were weeping, saying a collective goodbye to a gentle soul who gave us one last smile before leaving us in the dark.
Better than old King Kong, and meaner than.
Number 8, Frankenstein by the Edgar Winter Group. Have you ever wondered what a 20-minute mistake looks like when it is chopped into pieces? In the spring of 1973, a recording studio was covered in endless strips of magnetic tape. They were draped over chairs, spilling onto the floor, and looking like an absolute disaster. But that physical mess was actually the birthplace of a masterpiece. Originally, Edgar Winter and his band had a massive, sprawling jam session that was just meant to be a live warm-up. They simply called it the instrumental, but producer Rick Derringer heard something special in that chaos. Since there were no digital computers to fix things back then, they had to physically cut the tape with a razor blade and splice it back together to make a radio-friendly track. When drummer Chuck Ruff saw the chopped-up monster they had created, he mumbled that it looked exactly like Frankenstein. The name stuck perfectly. You have to remember how incredibly rare it is for a song without a single spoken word to dominate the airwaves. It was released as a B-side, but the groove was so infectious that DJs flipped the record over on their own. By May, this wordless wonder conquered the Billboard Hot 100, sitting proudly at number 1. It is a pure sensory memory for anyone who grew up in that era. It reminds us of a time when making music was physical, something you could touch with your hands and cut with a blade. Today, with everything living cleanly inside a computer screen, we will never again see a beautiful, chaotic monster built from pieces of tape on a studio floor. Number 7. Delta Dawn by Helen Reddy.
All the folks round Brownsville say she's crazy.
Have you ever woken up in the deep of the night, swearing someone you loved and lost was sitting right there in the room with you? That is exactly how this unforgettable summer hit was born. It sounds like a catchy country tune, but underneath that melody is a heavy, heartbreaking confession. Co-writer Alex Harvey jolted awake one night. He looked over and saw a vision of his mother, Emily, sitting in a rocking chair and smiling at him. She had passed away in a tragic car accident back in the late 50s. Overwhelmed with years of unresolved guilt, he grabbed his guitar and poured his soul out, writing the entire track in just 20 minutes. It was his final, delayed apology to her.
In her younger days, they called her Delta Dawn.
Before it became Helen Reddy's pop triumph, the track went through a fascinating Nashville ritual. It was passed from the grieving songwriter to a 13-year-old Tanya Tucker, and finally to Helen. Producer Tom Catalano realized it needed to reach beyond country radio. He gave it that massive gospel choir arrangement, turning it into a spiritual revival.
Delta Dawn, what's that flower?
And people felt that power. It ruled the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed at number 1 on the adult contemporary chart for 6 solid weeks in 1973. When Helen passed away in 2020, this track took on yet another layer of tears for those of us who grew up with her voice. It is not just a song about a fading Southern belle. It is a beautiful vessel, carrying the lingering spirits of the people we miss the most.
Take you to his mansion in the sky.
Number 6, Get Down by Gilbert O'Sullivan.
And I won't tell you no more, so get down, get down.
Be honest with me for a second. How many times have you sung along to this track, picturing a guy yelling at a disobedient dog? For 50 years, Half the world believed this was the ultimate anthem for frustrated pet owners. But we have all been completely fooled. Gilbert O'Sullivan actually wrote this as a simple finger warm-up exercise on his piano. He just wanted a fun break from his usual melancholic ballads. The lyrics were never about a golden retriever. They were about a girl behaving badly, a lady who was simply too clingy. He was literally telling her to get down from her high horse.
You give me the creeps when you jump on your feet, so get down.
The infectious electric piano you hear driving the whole song, that was not even Gilbert playing. Session musician Laurie Holloway nailed that defining riff. But the real twist, the reason we all got so confused, happened on British television. During the 1973 Christmas special of Top of the Pops, a dance troupe performed this song while literally scolding 4 very patient dogs on national TV.
Once upon a time, I drank a little wine.
That single broadcast cemented the dog myth forever. Despite the massive confusion, or maybe because of it, the track shot to #1 in the UK and firmly secured the #7 spot on the Billboard Hot 100. It is a hilarious reminder of how pop culture creates its own reality.
Baby, what do you think you're doing to me?
If you thought this was about a puppy all these years, drop a comment below and confess. You are definitely not alone. If you've ever shared a meaningful memory with this song, leave a comment with the number 6. It's my way of knowing we're remembering those moments together. Number 5, Goodbye My Love, Goodbye by Demis Roussos.
Goodbye, my love, goodbye.
Imagine the ultimate pop idol. You probably picture someone perfectly polished, right? In the summer of 1973, Europe bowed down to a bearded Greek man wearing a flowing caftan. Demis Roussos had just walked away from his progressive rock band, leaving behind heavy, avant-garde concepts to sing straight to the soul.
Leaving you today.
He possessed a voice that sounded like it belonged in a centuries-old opera house, yet he poured it into a simple, deeply emotional ballad, recording across Paris, Hamburg, and London. His team crafted a sound that was beautifully overwhelming, while American audiences were completely missing out. This track was quietly swallowing the entire European continent. It shot to #1 in Germany, Switzerland, and Spain. Demis became a massive, unlikely heartthrob. People did not just hear him on the radio, they felt every single vibration of his soaring vocals deep in their chests. Looking back now, the heavily packaged music industry of today would never know what to do with a man like him. But back then, pure, raw vocal power was enough to rule the airwaves. When Demis passed away in 2015, millions of fans played this exact track, shedding tears for a gentle giant who taught us that true romance has no standard look. It just takes a voice that can reach the heavens.
Come back to you.
Number 4, Can the Can by Suzi Quatro.
Stand for your man, honey. Try to can the can.
Let us talk about one of the most puzzling ironies in rock history. Imagine being born in Detroit, the very heart of American muscle and music. You strap on a massive bass guitar, squeeze into tight black leather, and sing with enough fire to melt a microphone. But your own country? They completely look the other way. That was the harsh reality for Suzi Quatro in 1973. America simply was not ready for a girl who wanted to lead the band instead of just singing pretty melodies in the background. So she packed her bags and crossed the Atlantic to find her crowd. Teaming up with British producers Mike Chapman and Nicky Chin, She unleashed a heavy glam rock sound that shook Europe to its core. While radio stations back home stubbornly ignored her, this loud and proud track climbed all the way to #1 in the UK. She became a massive, undeniable star everywhere, except the place she grew up. Most kids in the United States only realized who she really was years later, when she popped up on their TV screens as Leather Tuscadero on the sitcom Happy Days. Looking back now, it feels a bit unfair, does it not? We missed out on her prime years on the radio, but today, we look back with pure gratitude. She took the rejection, kept playing that heavy bass, and kicked down the doors of rock and roll, proving to every little girl watching that they could make just as much noise as the boys. #3, Hellraiser by The Sweet. Imagine standing on a stage in heavy makeup, playing your heart out, only to have the audience throw bottles at your head. That actually happened to this band at a gig in Scotland. Glam rock was taking over, but the transition was brutally rough for the crowds. But honestly, the flying bottles were not the hardest thing they had to face. Behind the lipstick and the wild clothes, these four guys were fighting a quiet, desperate battle for respect. For their first 9 singles, the music industry treated them like studio puppets. The producers would not even let them play their own instruments on the records. They were only allowed to sing. By the time they recorded this blistering track, they had finally clawed back some control. They were playing their own heavy, driving sound, proving they were real musicians, and the public absolutely devoured it. It shot up the UK charts in May of 1973. But in a deeply frustrating twist, it got blocked and stuck at #2. In fact, this was one of 3 consecutive singles that year to stall at #2 without ever taking the crown. Being the runner-up 3 times in a single year could break a band's spirit. But looking back today, we do not care about chart statistics. We just feel a deep gratitude for a group of talented boys who refuse to be manufactured pop stars. They fought tooth and nail for their artistic freedom and left us with a fiercely electric summer hit that still makes our blood pump. #2, Squeeze Me, Please Me by Slade. What does absolute musical domination sound like? For Britain in the early 70s, it sounded like stomping boots, wild outfits, and deliberately misspelled song titles. Slade was not just on the radio, they were the radio. But the spark for this massive summer anthem did not happen in some glamorous Hollywood mansion. It started in a smoky local pub called The Trumpet in Bilston. Bassist Jimmy Lee was just having a drink, listening to an unknown local musician named Reg Kierl pounding away on a beat-up piano. That raw, working-class rhythm planted a seed in his mind. They actually recorded the track while touring America, laying it down at A&M Studios in Los Angeles. Yet, producer Chaz Chandler made sure it kept every ounce of that sweaty, beer-soaked English pub energy, and the fans completely devoured it. By July of 1973, this loud, joyful noise sold 300,000 copies in its first week alone. It shot straight to #1 in the UK, making Slade the first act since the Beatles to have 2 consecutive singles debut at the very top of the charts. Looking back today, there is something deeply moving about that journey. The biggest glories do not always require million-dollar equipment. Sometimes, they just need a dusty piano in a corner pub. and a band brave enough to turn that simple joy into a roar that helped a whole generation forget their troubles. Number 1. The Free Electric Band by Albert Hammond. What was the ultimate teenage dream in the early 70s? For so many of us, it was packing a single bag, throwing away a safe college degree, and running off to California with nothing but a guitar. This song captured that exact rebellious spirit perfectly. But here's the greatest twist of our entire countdown. The man who wrote this flawless anthem about American middle-class rebellion was not American at all. Albert Hammond was born in London. He and his British co-writer completely made up this fictional story of a wealthy kid defying his parents to join a rock band. Hammond produced the track himself, keeping the arrangement breezy and full of life. He even included a quiet heartbreak, leaving a girl behind simply because she wanted a predictable life in the suburbs. It felt so incredibly genuine because it mirrored the exact choices our generation was agonizing over. It only reached number 48 on the Billboard Hot 100. It is actually the lowest charting song on our list today, but it did not matter. It resonated so deeply that it shot to number 1 in parts of Europe. Looking back now, dropping out of school to play music in today's world feels like a terrifying gamble. But back then, it was a romantic leap of faith. And the most beautiful part of this entire story? Decades later, his real son, Albert Hammond Jr., actually lived out the exact fantasy his father wrote about, becoming the guitarist for the massive rock band The Strokes, a father's fictional dream, beautifully turning into a son's reality. It reminds us that sometimes, the bravest thing you can ever do is bet on your own freedom. We started with a song the whole world thought was about a dog, uncovered a rebellious American dream written by a man in London, and shed a tear over a joyful boogie tune that turned into a sudden, tragic goodbye. These are not just old summer hits. They are fragile time capsules. They hold the innocence we lost, the heartbreaks we survived, and those golden afternoons driving with the windows down, when life felt so wonderfully simple. If you want to keep this late-night time machine running, hit subscribe. Now, tell me, which of these 1973 classics instantly takes you back to your youth? Share your memory below. Until next time, keep the dial tuned right here.
How's the sweet